Welcome to another video by former carer Matthew Mckenzie. Almost I could say like a carer advocate, I suppose, especially for mental health carers. Now this video is on loneliness awareness, and coming off the back of Loneliness Awareness Week that was hosted by, I suppose, another charity by Untitled Trust in this year 2020. The Loneliness Awareness Week campaign usually took place between, I believe, the 15th to the 19th of June. This is obviously the 27th of June by the time and date of this recorded video. But I still felt it's such an important issue that affects carers, specifically unpaid carers across the country, across the world. Now, as I've mentioned, the Loneliness campaign was run in conjunction with many other charities, but I think the most important ones was Marmalade Trust and the Joe Cox Foundation. But before I do go on, let's have a look at what loneliness is, because sometimes I do feel, I've been affected by it, and I'm sure other carers have been affected by loneliness, but they might not be too sure what on earth it is. Well, basically, loneliness is, let's say, an unpleasant, suppose, emotional response to isolation, which is something carers, if caring for someone with particularly chronic mental or physical illness, can suffer close to all the time. Loneliness, I would say, in regards to the emotional responses, perhaps we could say feeling sad or feeling, let's say, distressed by being by yourself, or feeling isolated. Or we could say feeling disconnected from the community or from the world around you. Now, because I've linked this theme of this video into the effects of loneliness, it's important to mention what caring is, especially when we feel that caring is an important part of life. It's an important part of my life, of anyone's life, caring for someone that you're close to. It's simply being a part of being a human. Carers are just trying to hold their families together, or hold their loved ones together, and reduce the pain and suffering that person that they're caring for is going through. As you know, or if you don't know, carers often have to make an enormous contribution to society, and they save billions across the UK each year. However, as I mentioned before, when you're caring under difficult circumstances, especially if the person's cares for health declines, then the chances are that loneliness will increase, not only for the cared for, but for the carer. But loneliness in itself is just not the problem. In the year 2020, there are other factors that are increasing. So let's look at social isolation. So in the year 2020, in the month of June, or coming up to the end of the month of June, we have what you call social distancing, which can lead, I suppose, to social isolation. Not to say that social isolation wasn't a factor in the first place, but let's first look at social isolation. Now, what is social isolation? Basically, social isolation, I suppose, can be defined, I suppose, in an absence of social interactions, or having some form of contact, or even relationships, not just with a girlfriend or woman, or a man, but with friends and also family. Social isolation, I suppose, occurs when a person has little or no contact with other people, which can happen with unpaid carers. And, it can occur over a short period of time, or it can increase to even longer periods. And just an important factor to mention is that social isolation is actually not the same as loneliness, but it can have an effect on that. Now, with the problems of the coronavirus, or the COVID-19 epidemic, or pandemic, I should say, we have what you call social distancing. Yes, it's being lessened, but it's important to mention it because with social distancing, people need to keep an acceptable distance from others to avoid catching the coronavirus and perhaps even passing that on to the person that they are caring for. Now, with social distancing, of course, that can bring isolation, which can lead to loneliness. Now that we have some idea of what loneliness is, what, apart from social distancing and social isolation, what can cause the situation of loneliness in carers? And this is just to educate those on what carers or unpaid carers go through. And when I mention carers, I'm not basically talking about care workers in the NHS or what you'd call our carers. I'm talking about carers caring for someone who they're emotionally attached to. It could be a carer caring for their mother or their father, or a young carer caring for their mother or father, or you're caring for a sibling, something like that. So let's look at the cause of loneliness on carers. I mean, one of the first things that I could mention is loneliness in itself can increase the chance of mental health conditions, especially when we talk about depression or anxiety. And it's not only the cared for at risk, as perhaps with their health, they were feeling lonely and isolated anyway, and this can unfortunately lead on to the carer or the family, I suppose, if, feeling the strain of providing that much needed care and support. Obviously, another factor to take note of is it with loneliness and with caring, I suppose, it can be difficult in meeting new people due to the caring at home or whoever you're caring for, which can increase loneliness, especially if you feel like you don't belong. Now, for myself, I once had someone say to me that they just don't have time, for me, and perhaps, why would anyone want to be around those who are vulnerable and are dealing with depression situations? When caring for someone with mental health issues, like as I was caring for my mother, it can be, let's say, a stigma, both for the carer and the cared for. Thus, the carer can fear rejection or ridicule from others, especially if the cared for was stigmatized by society or the community, or the carer was stigmatized by the community, which is all too common, as many in the community may not understand mental health, or might sort of find it funny to see someone suffering from forms of psychosis, depression, anxiety. I certainly have been ridiculed, not only for caring for my mother, but also people do find when someone is suffering from depression kind of funny, and usually it can tend to be the men, I suppose, who find it sort of macho to ridicule someone, to ostracize someone on these things. I'm not saying all men, but you do get the ones out there. Other factors would be, I suppose, feelings. Or people can be lonely, especially with feelings or loss of grief. Just 3 months ago, I lost my mother due to this video, I suppose. Due to the timing of this video, 3 months ago, I lost both my mother and my aunt. And when you're grieving for someone, it's a lonely process. It's not only, I suppose, access to people, to groups. If you're caring for someone who has mobility issues and you need to be often there by their side, and you might not have the financial support to bring in a helper or care worker, then this can cause an inability to participate in activities. And also, I've mentioned stigma before. The stigma of mental health can send close families and friends packing. I did mention I've had friends just move on. They don't want to be around a depressing situation. And with lack of close friends or family ties, loneliness can increase or continue. Caring, of course, can bring purpose and a strong identity in someone's life, as I've mentioned before. It's part of being human. But loneliness itself can reduce the purpose or meaning of someone's life, especially when carers feel that there's little hope in the future, because let's say if they're caring for someone who's chronically ill for some time, carers run the risk of being unskilled, which is not the truth, but not to say that carers don't feel that way. Now, when my mum did pass away 3 months ago from this recording or from this video, I ended up living alone during lockdown as well, and this of course added to the increased effects of loneliness. And if you're obviously been caring for a long time, caring in itself can wear carers down to the point of poor physical and mental health. With those risks, the issue of loneliness does increase, especially in later life when your physical health is completely worn down. But it's not all bad news. There are recommendations, there are things that can help carers in the struggle against loneliness. I did take a look at a report which is run along with Carers UK and, as mentioned before, the Joe Cox organisation. And the report was called The World Shrinks. And they've mentioned from this report that as a society, we need to reach out to carers to show that they are not alone. The report mentions that we also need to ensure that carers can get, both practical and emotional supports, usually, I suppose, from carer centres, and I know some NHS organisations, especially NHS trusts, may run groups as well. But if you are a carer, or perhaps if not, you can advise carers, or if you're a carer, you listen to the following recommendations that I've picked up. And one of the most important ones is, try and connect, or perhaps reconnect with friends and families. It doesn't have to be technological. It doesn't have to be through virtual technology. It could be with a phone call, and you will get friends who will just walk away and just want to get on with their life. Good luck to them, but there'll always be those out there that will have a listening ear, and those out there that recognize the value of caring for someone and will step in and try and just be a listening ear and try and share that journey with you. The other one is obviously trying to get out there. I mean, it's very hard to do during this pandemic, and I don't know when this coronavirus is just going to just go. But it does help if you can, if you're a carer, if you can try and get out, join outings or social functions, as long as you're careful. One thing that definitely can help is at least get some exercise. It's not really good to be caring 24/7. I wouldn't advise that for anyone. But if you can just get some exercise, and maybe even do some shopping, then at least you're getting out there. You might not feel that the effect straight away, but you are participating, I suppose, in society when you're doing some shopping. And of course, there are carer groups. I mean, I run a carer support group over in Greenwich, and we aim at some point to go to Greenwich Park and just feel connected. Other options also is being involved in the community. Again, it's hard to do during the COVID-19 crisis, but it can be a very rewarding experience, even if you just have to join a club or do some studying, or even try and learn a new skill. Of course, all the things that I've mentioned cannot obviously compare. If loneliness and isolation increase to such a point, then certainly do discuss this with a doctor, perhaps even a mental professional or a trusted person. I'd like to say again, thanks for watching this video or recording, and it's a very important topic. Please I'd say good luck in your caring journey if you're a carer, and I hope it's been educational for you.